In this presentation, we are going to cover human resources in fire and EMS administration. We will cover specifically human resources, diversity in the department, legal issues, and public sector discipline. Human resources uses merit rules and regulations along with union contracts to provide direction for individuals carrying out job duties. Merit rules contain provisions for employee pay, benefits, and job descriptions. The chief officer should have influence over personnel management functions, but this influence varies based on the size of the department. Larger departments will have more staff dedicated to full-time overseeing of human resource issues than smaller departments. Complete diversity reflects a blend of gender, race, age, education, country of origin, and other characteristics. Historically, FES organizations have been made up of people with similar backgrounds. Today, FES organizations have to recruit minorities and women to compensate for workforces that are predominantly white and male. While promoting diversity is important, judges have ruled against the use of quota systems for hiring and promoting. There have been some key affirmative action cases involving fire departments. In 1990, 6 firefighters at the Boston Fire Department were found to have lied on their applications, falsely claiming minority status. This is an example of what some fear happens with affirmative action initiatives, where applicants are incentivized to lie about minority status to gain some kind of competitive advantage. In 2009, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of a group of firefighters who claimed that they would have been promoted based on exam results for lieutenant and captain positions. The results of the exam were discarded when city officials noticed that no black applicants scored high enough to be promoted. It's typical in many departments for the chief to have the option of choosing from the top 3 candidates on a list for promotion. This option allows the chief to skip over someone who did really well in the promotion process, but who they feel would not be acceptable. This discretion is typically this discretion is not typically used to promote diversity, but to acknowledge the chief's professional judgment on the qualifications for promotion. Generally, diversity should be accepted and encouraged. The workplace can benefit from having workers from different sets of backgrounds with different experiences. It is important, though, to achieve diversity in the department without lowering performance standards. As the IAFF has stated, diversity should never come by lowering validated entry standards. Rather, it should come from actively recruiting qualified men and women from all racial and ethnic backgrounds to careers in fire service. There are several important legal issues worth covering related to human resource management in FES organizations. The Supreme Court ruled an entire category of speech outside of the protection of the First Amendment, and that speech is statements made by government employees in the course of their official duties. Justice Kennedy wrote in the majority opinion stating, "When public employees make statements pursuant of their official duties, the employees are not speaking as citizens for First Amendment purposes, and the Constitution does not insulate their communications from employer discipline." This does not apply to whistleblowing, but fire officials should be careful about blaming fire deaths on inadequate funding because their speech in this official position is not necessarily protected by the First Amendment. The Americans with Disabilities Act provides civil rights protections to people with disabilities and guarantees equal opportunity in employment, public accommodations, transportation, government services, and telecommunications. Reasonable accommodations for disabilities can sometimes create undue hardship when applied to public safety jobs. This makes it very important to document job performance requirements along with medical, physical, and mental abilities needed to perform job duties. Injuries are a common legal issue. Policies should be created to ensure documentation and verification of injuries that are reported on the job. Standardized forms should be submitted to the appropriate municipal official for workers' compensation. High-ranking FES officials should make sure that they take the time to visit injured employees in the hospital, and those injured employees may return to work on light duty before taking on full job responsibilities. Pregnancy can also create a situation appropriate for light duty work. In most cases, it is a good idea to provide light duty responsibilities for employees who are pregnant. Though it is not a requirement to provide light duty responsibilities, pregnancy can result in the loss of agility and can compromise the ability to perform essential job functions. Light duty should be provided for pregnant employees, especially if light duty is the standard practice for temporarily injured male employees. Drug and alcohol is also an important legal matter, and FES organizations should have a written policy prohibiting members from using, consuming, or being impaired by drugs or alcohol. Unfortunately, there are times when employees act inappropriately and discipline is necessary. There is a perception in the public sector that public sector rules make it very difficult or nearly impossible to discipline an employee. These perceptions are not quite accurate. The difference between the public sector and many private sector employers is not that it's impossible to fire a public employee, it's that due process is granted in many public sector professions. The disciplinary procedures in FES organizations should provide due process, including written notice of charges, a complete explanation of the evidence and reasoning on which the charge is based, and a meaningful opportunity for the employee to be heard by an impartial decision maker. FES organizations should make sure that discipline is fair, reasonable, and evenly enforced. It is important to have written procedures and standard operating procedures that include potential inappropriate behavior and performance standards. It's also important to have an ongoing training program that informs employees of inappropriate behaviors and allows them to conform to the standards, allows them appropriate time to conform to the standards. Disciplinary procedures should be consistent and non-discriminatory. All departments should have a policy of due process that outlines the disciplinary procedures, starting with a written warning, continued violations, and results in some substantial consequence or consequences. In this brief presentation, we've covered some of the issues that face FES administrators regarding human resource management.